Mm-hmm. Basically, I don't have any question.
Okay,
Um,
good. I really must say I was slightly nervous. Yeah, speaking with a professional psychologist about this. So I'm I'm happy you're not taking my ideas apart. Thank you. Or Asante. Asante. Okay. All right. So now that we've laid the groundwork in terms of who am I, where am I, why am I, and where do I want to go, right? That's what we did yesterday. Today we want to look at the broader picture of the world, what we're actually in, why does this feel so messy, and what does that mean for um, for the way we deal with the world, right? And where do we take this, right? So that's the focus of today. And one can start from many angles. I'm going to start from one of the foundational aspects of how we run society, and that is our way of thinking about money. Up until 2003, I did not question where does money come from? How does it work? Could it work differently? All of that. And in 2003, I found myself in a meeting with the head of the Central Bank of Germany and the former head of the Central Bank of Belgium, who had been the architect, or one of the architects of the introduction of the euro, Ernst Welteke and Bernard Lietaer. And I was there because I had a software company and we were supposed to build a platform for a new currency that those two dudes wanted to invent somewhere in Germany. And my head exploded. I could not imagine how these two high finance people would do something so seemingly um, anarchistic to just come up with a new currency somewhere, right? And Bernard was so friendly and nice to explain all of that to me, and we've had a loose conversation up until his passing a few years ago, and I learned a lot from him. So the design of that currency is such that it grows exponentially. The money supply, there are different ways of counting the sum of total money in the system. M3 or M4 is the totalist sum. And if you count that globally, you will see that this grows exponentially. This has some reasons. One reason is that we believe in something like we call fractional reserve, meaning a private bank only needs to have a very, very small amount of security to give you a loan. So if you go to the bank and say, okay, I need 1 million of whatever currency for doing this, and they believe that you're actually be able to do something meaningful with that, and they might come back and get their money somehow, plus interest, they will create that money in that moment. And they will charge interest. So with your million, you will pay them back more. The money supply grows exponentially, and exponentials are a tricky beast. We're not really well equipped at thinking and thinking about exponentials as humans. As a little thought experiment, if we let's imagine all oceans of the world are dry. And then we start filling them with a spoon. And our spoon grows exponentially. So it doubles in size every time we fill. And that might take a minute or so, and then already all of the oceans, if we do that once per second, right? All of our oceans are half full after, I don't know, I haven't done the calculation, but let's say a minute. How long will it take until they're full? One more second, because the next spoon is the size of half of everything that was before, right? That's how exponentials work. They go almost invisible in the beginning and then super suddenly. And if you look at all the curves around us, the growth in money supply, the growth in exploitation of the planet, the growth in technologies, they all go like that at the moment. So, but let's focus on money. So, because of that exponential growth, we needed to find a solution to how do we back that? So we had the idea that we have gold somewhere safely stowed away, and you could take that piece of paper and go there and get some gold for this. Now we obviously needed to find more gold in order to satisfy this growth. But gold doesn't grow exponentially, right? So we just find as much gold as is there, and then it's done. And that became evident in the early 70s or late 60s, somewhere around then. And so Nixon changed that system. And he said, well, we're so ingenious and so innovative and so productive that we can back the value of our currency by our productivity. And he used the GDP as a measure to measure this and backed the dollar by GDP. Up until 71, on each dollar bill, there was a text saying, you can get a piece of gold for this. In 71, that was replaced by In God We Trust. Right? So no gold anymore. GDP has to grow exponentially. Another indicator of that something is exponential is that it has to grow by a certain percentage in the same amount of time. All right. So we or our politicians are pretty obsessed with GDP growth of 2 to 3% per year. That's because our money will be devalued if we don't achieve that growth. Okay. So now, what does GDP measure? GDP measures how productive can we be in a given society, region, country, in a given time, usually country, year. This can be measured in several ways. You can measure income, you can measure actual productivity output, produce. But effectively, what you're doing is you're looking at how many atoms or bits can you move, right? And the more atoms or bits you can move, the better. Now, this doesn't qualify anything, right? It just quantifies. And one really, really good way to move many atoms is to destroy stuff, right? So if you've ever asked yourself why fashion cycles, at least in Europe and in the US, have sped up over the last 25 years from 4 per year to 52 per year, that's the reason, right? If people run out to buy new t-shirts every week instead of every 3 months, you move more atoms. War also moves more atoms. So that's that's really important to understand that the mechanics of the GDP does not qualify anything. It just wants to maximize growth. Okay, but let's assume we're doing something useful and good with it. We still need to move atoms. Now, what do we need to move atoms and bits? We need energy. Currently, we're using 19 terawatts of energy as a constant input for humanity to run the things in the way we're running them right now. 85% of that comes from fossil fuels. And apart from the fact that fossil fuels are creating climate chaos at the moment, we will also be running out of them very soon. But nobody knows, of course, when, but we can see how the energy over energy return is diminishing, meaning you put in 1 ton of fossil fuel to get 1 ton and a bit of fossil fuel. And this bit is growing smaller and smaller over time at the moment. And at one point, it'll be you put in 1 ton and only get 1 ton minus something out. So that's when we stop mining for fossil fuels. Currently, we're burning the fossil fuel equivalent of 100 billion barrels of crude oil per year. 100 billion barrels of crude oil per year. If you put the energy equivalent of a barrel of oil into your car and drive until you run out of gas, that'll probably take you a couple of days. If you push your car, it would take you 5 years to go the same distance. In other words, we have 500 billion human equivalents in energy slaves working for us to grow that kind of economy, to support the growing money supply. Right? Now, money can function entirely differently, and I'm going to give a little idea about how to think about that. But I just want to finish that thought. So 19 terawatts fossil fuels, we could say, oh, let's go renewable. Right? That's the standard answer. Now, the problem with that, while it's in theory good, the problem with that is that we need minerals to do this. We need energy to do this, right? Because the nature of renewable energy is such that we have to change parts of our infrastructure to transport it. We cannot run electricity through pipes, for example. We cannot fuel our cars in the same way, etc. So we have to change something. Now, if you look at the minerals needed for this, they are also in a curve of diminishing returns, meaning we are running out of these minerals. And if you do the calculations, it appears that we will max out at 9 terawatt. That's less than half of what we have right now, if we were to go fully renewable. Okay, so that whole chain of fiat currencies, GDP, and energy is going to collapse unless we find this magic source of energy that'll solve this problem. So this is why everybody is trying to go geothermal or nuclear. Nuclear, we would run out of fuel in about 300 years. And we should be building 200 to 300 nuclear power plants right now, which we're not. So this is why now everybody's looking to fusion, which is not yet working, and small nuclear power plants. plus the innovations in geothermal. This might work, but it doesn't have to, right? So, so that's the part of the predicament we're in. All of that leads to centralization of power, all sorts of power. Why? Because the nature of the of money is such that it accumulates where it already is, right? That's why 20 white old men on a bus have the same amount of money as the poor half of humanity. It accumulates. And it isn't only money that accumulates, it's also political decision power, um, energy, production power, all of that accumulates and is centralized. So that whole structure is very likely fail. And mainly for two reasons. One is it's set up for exploitation. So you need to exploit in order to maximize your profits to run that whole system. And people who are active in this, so that's industry, companies, etc., they're in a multipolar trap, which means that if there are 10 companies competing in the market for one type of solution, energy or a certain pharmaceutical, whatever, the more ruthless they are in the externalization of negative outcomes. So when they in their production process, for example, create some chemical that um, needs to be taken care of, cannot just be put into the environment. That's costly, right? So the first one that doesn't care about that, but just puts it into the river, will make more profit. So somebody will start doing this. So the others who don't do this lose. So they will also start doing this. And this is a typical multipolar trap where it's a race to the bottom of ethical, sane behavior. Okay, that's where we're in. So we have all of these exploitation traps that start eroding that system. And the other has to do with the centralization part. This is very brittle. So one ship that blocks one of the two big canals in the world, Suez and Panama, diminishes um, the global movement of goods by 14%. So you have very few strategic locations where if they break, the whole thing just doesn't work anymore. And this has cascading effects. So it's very likely that given all of that, all of the above, everything I've said, that this system is not going to work. But there's more, because if you ask human beings, how do you want to live? Hardly anybody wants to live that way, this way that we're in right now. Um, it actually looks like that due to the structures of our current setup, we're upregulating people who see this differently. And these people are usually socio and psychopaths, and they're represented at roughly 2% of the population. And if you look at the levels or the amounts, the percentage of psychopaths or sociopaths in leading positions, they're overrepresented, right? 10 to 20% of the leadership are somehow socio-psychopathic. So we have to find ways of, for example, down-regulating the representation and the decision power, the centralization of socio and psychopaths to the 2% they actually represent in the population. One way of achieving something like this is maximization of transparency. So if you are fully transparent in all of the things, you can achieve systems that have multipolar traps that optimize towards good outcomes, right? Because if you combine that with the wish of the people to live a good life, which is roughly the same all over the planet, right? So if you ask people all over the planet, which I've done, hundreds of people, how do you want to live in the future? Along those 7 questions that we discussed, they all say, I want to live with some good people in a natural, healthy environment. I want to live from and with that environment. So for somehow we have this hunch that it's healthier to live directly in connection with the environment. And and then there are 2 axes of differences. So some say we want a lot of technology in this, and some say we don't want any technology in this. And some say we want to have very strict rules of interaction, Victorian style of culture. And some say we want to have a very free and open culture. But within that, everybody wants to live in a very similar way. We call that coherent pluralism. So we all agree on the same absolute basic values of how do we want to live, but our expression might be slightly different. But we live very close to or within the Dunbar scale. Robin Dunbar is I think social psychologist, I'm not sure, but he came up with this series of numbers to describe different aggregate states of social dynamics in groups. And it seems that there's an optimum of 150 people in a community where we can still maintain connection. We can still maintain relationship between those 150 people. After that, it starts fading. After about 4,500, it starts breaking down entirely. So this is part of where our hunch comes from, that we want to live in a small community with the lands or embedded in the land between 150 and 4,500 somewhere. Now, that is, although that is contrary to the centralization, because that's highly distributed, it is very likely to happen. It's actually very probably the most stable solution in any scenario. So whether you assume that the current state of the world will start breaking down, and we might have to be more nomadic because climate is more disruptive. Going into these smaller communities makes a lot of sense. But it could also be that we solve the issues we have. We somehow solve climate, we somehow solve energy. And then it's much closer to our nature to live in these small communities. And it's actually more in tune with nature itself. Right? Plus, on a local level, you have enormous amounts of social control, meaning you have the perfect conditions for absolute transparency. And transparency, again, is a driver for positively oriented multipolar tribes. Okay? And so this is why we believe that empowering anything that makes people more resilient, more self-reliant as a local community helps move into this direction and away from the current paradigm into a new paradigm. And what we want to do is we want to use the platform we have at the moment of possibilities, technology, the exponential growth of technology to empower and enable that and speed that up. Right? Then we could call that kind of technology that we would love to do, love to use in that, physiagogic technologies. Physiagogic technologies are technologies that are natural growth oriented instead of extractive. So natural growth could be so-called hyperaccumulators, plants that can extract minerals from the earth. And so you can basically harvest copper or cobalt or whatever you need from a plant. That would be a physiagogic technology. And the nature of these, again, is highly distributed because all you need is seeds, or all you need is microorganisms that you can run through a metabolic pathway to create a certain kind of material that you need for building a house, for example. And that is super democratic because anybody in the world can use it. It's unstoppable. And then we can live in small communities in thriving conditions with these kinds of technologies. And because we're self-sufficient and self-reliant, can downregulate the psychopaths and sociopaths and create an entirely different structure. But that's what we're after. Okay, I know that was a lot again, but that's what we're here for. What are your thoughts or questions?
First of all, thank you. Super, super inspiring. Again, sorry for the notification. I mean, first of all, I have a feeling. So, and this feeling is that, and I'm pretty aware of this, that it's absolutely not healthy the way we live. So, and that we as humanity really collectively accepting so much misery on this planet. I think about poverty, you know, nobody has to live in poverty on this planet, but many people do, and we accept it, you know, we co-create it every single day. So this is just one example. And you clarified how deep the structure has really is grown into us, you know, and that we're all part of this system. And at the same time that we're the only ones, like people like us talking about this and learning more, raising awareness, we're the only ones who can change this. And I also see that I find it sometimes very hard to focus like on a new approach that is healthy for the planet and the people, because there is so much going wrong every single day. You know, sometimes I feel really numb, you know, to focus on hope, to focus on light. So that became very clear for me again, that I really envy all of these new approaches, you know. And then if I have a kid starving, somewhere on this planet, you know, I think, fuck, you know, how do we want to solve this? So definitely one way is living in small communities. I agree on that. And also to have like this theoretical Überbau, you know, this is also fantastic. I think all the things you have talked about in this 33 minutes, a little bit less, I would really have to sit down for the next week or even longer, you know, to go into all the different terminologies you have used. For example, what exactly is a GDP? And how could it happen on this planet that all the factors that are constructing the GDP, they are all exploiting this planet? You know, what would it take to measure things that serve our health and nurture us? You know, so why don't we measure this? And
can I say something to that quick?
Yeah, and also like a fiat currency. I don't know if Catherine knows what a fiat currency is, you know. So there's some like basics, you know. I would very much like to deep dive and do our homework, definitely. Yeah, please share.
Yeah, so fiat currency is basically just a token of exchange that we agree on. That's it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's usually a social construct. There doesn't have to be any physical backing to this. But there are people out there that have been thinking about this for a long, long time and been working on alternatives to the GDP. And the GDP was developed by a Russian economist to measure spending capacity of a country for their military expense. That was the original intention of the GDP. And even that guy said that it's a really, really bad idea to measure the success of an economy or a society based on GDP. That's really bad idea. So what people have been working on is, for example, the New Economics Foundation in London, who have developed the Happy Planet Index. And the HPI is based on existing indicators like the Gini index, which measures the inequality within a country in terms of income, life expectancy at birth, ecological footprint per person, and subjective happiness. And if you look at the Happy Planet Index versus the GDP index globally, what you see is that roughly they're inverted. So if you're high up on the GDP scale, you're probably pretty low down on the Happy Planet Index, and the other way around. And that means several things. First of all, it means that the countries with less economic power have a higher incentive to move towards the Happy Planet Index, but they have no power to do so. And if they did, nobody would care, right? Because they're economically more or less irrelevant anyway. And the ones with a high GDP ranking, but a low HPI ranking, they would lose a lot, right? In other words, so Germany is actually not too bad. Germany ranks on, I think, spot 4 or something on GDP, but spot 20 or something on HPI. But still, you would flip your position, right? So no politician in the world could ever follow that project, right? Saying, oh, let's ditch GDP for HPI or any other measure of that kind, because you would lose your position in the world. And unless everybody else agrees on that that's a good thing at the same time and does the same thing at the same time, you will not move there because you'll be the loser. You're in a multipolar trap. And that's the issue, right? So that's why we cannot expect the current institutions to take that shift unless brutally forced by something, right? Something could be enormous catastrophe or the people. And to that, I want to remind us, especially in this context, that when we're talking about all of this, we're talking about 10, maybe 20% of the human population that are on the top of this. And that's more or less Europe, maybe extended Europe and Northern America. That's it, right? And so if and when the 80, 90% of the rest of humanity decides they're fed up with that kind of game and change the way they play, that whole thing will be over tomorrow. There will be some upheaval, right? There will be unpleasant things happening, right? Because the colonial North will still want to maintain power, right? Of course. But there's no way they can really stop 80% of the human population if they coordinate and basically say stop. But this is why with my personal mission with Motherland is that I want to see a world in which Africa doesn't deliver goods to Europe anymore. And let us deal with our own shit. If we want to have coffee, then we figure out how we do that. But take care of your own environment and people. And that is the ultimate act of rebellion to me.
Catherine, are you with us? Yes.
I'd say viva.
Pura vida.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I'd start by saying that this is oops, sorry.
Oops. Don't worry.
Yeah, this is a lot to digest. In Kenya right now, there is a part of the country that people are really dying of starvation.
Exactly.
Turkana counties, the northern part of Kenya.
Yeah.
And there was even a video that was going around of a child who was breastfeeding on a mother who had already died.
Wow.
Yeah, things are so bad that animals are even being fed papers, magazines, and boxes, the cows. So there has been numerous deaths on especially animals. Yeah, and people too. This is an area that has not received rain for the past at least 3 years. Yeah, and now when you speak of small communities, there are some people that just hear of starvation, but there are people that are experiencing it. And when some organizations come, this is a place, this is not the first time. These are parts of the country that are always, that always faced drought and famine. But you see, for the longest time, I think Kenya received independence, I think 54 years ago. And you see the government has not really, I'd say, done anything of a long-term solution. So now they run around with the trucks of food taken to that part of the country, but for how long? You see, so when organizations like Motherland come up and they say let's look at this a small community somewhere, and then we empower them with something that can help them so that they can stand on their own, so that they can because you see that part of the country also they have oil, yeah, but you see people only exploit the people. They're being exploited so much. You find
Mm-hmm.
their lands, there's oil, minerals, but nothing, the community doesn't get anything from them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you find that the idea of this thing that you say, is it physiogothic tech or something?
Physiologic, yeah.
Physiologic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you find that there are minerals, the people that can be helped, but nothing of a long term is there. But now when something like Motherland comes and physiagogic technologies, thank you. Thank you. It's really helpful and it will help people. So when you go to a community, whatever small they have, you spoke of coffee, the way we export. There's a part of the country, especially in the Rift region, where coffee is being planted a lot. A lot is the cash crop of that region of Kenya. So you find that people are being exploited. You find it doesn't really help the community. Someone else somewhere is benefiting from this. So you find that there's something big somewhere, but the people in the community are not really benefiting or are not getting anything good out of it. They're dying of hunger, they're dying of poverty, they're dying of starvation, but there's something really that can be done. So it's really, really a good venture. And I agree with you. So I would want to see a world where, we help ourselves with our commodities, with our crop, with our flowers, so that we also develop. We are called developing countries, but really, a lot of people, we are not really there yet. Yeah, because if you hear like a country like Kenya, people are dying of starvation. It's really painful.
Yeah, and unnecessary.
Yeah.
So I forgot. I promised to describe a positive implementation of a currency, and that's just as an example of how that could work, right? And if you start digging into that, you'll find that there have been experiments in Europe a lot in the 30s, leading up to the war, where people have started creating new local currencies that lifted people out of poverty very, very quickly on a local level, but that then were prohibited by the central authorities. Right?
Really?
That happened. Yeah, that happened in the US. That happened in Germany. That happened in many places. So Bernard told me the story about one day he got called by the Belgian government, and the Belgian government called over the head of the city government of Ghent. The city government of Ghent had a problem, but they couldn't deal with it, and they were pretty pissed off that the national government just overruled them. But then in the end, they ended up very happy because Bernard actually solved their problem. The problem was that in one large part of Ghent, there were many illegal immigrants. And the nature of being an illegal immigrant is that you cannot easily work. If you cannot easily work, you don't have proper income, and you're then entering a downward spiral of substance abuse, aggression, all sorts of desolation, right? So it wasn't pleasant to be in that in that part of town. And so the government called Bernard, asked him, "Can you help us?" And he went there. He asked the people, "What's your dream? What do you dream of?" And they said, "We dream of a piece of land where we can grow some salad," because they had a rural background. So he got a piece of land from the city. He prepared it for agriculture, and he made it accessible by earning a certain currency, a token, that you could earn by doing pleasant things in your environment, in your community. So, for example, being nice to your neighbors would give you token. Putting flowers in the windows would give you token. Cleaning the street would give you a token, etc. And in next to nothing, that environment completely changed. People started getting out of that rut and into more structure and started getting their act together, being legal, getting a work, all of that. Other cities in Belgium copied that, right? That was a currency. So money is not a problem. Money is not bad. It's just a question of how do you design it, right? And to move back to the 30s, in the city of Wörgl, that's one of the more um, uh, well-known experiments. I think that was an Austrian city. The mayor ran out of money. He didn't have budget to do all the things he needed to give the people that were unemployed some support, to fix the streets, to fix the infrastructure, etc. So what he did was he created a local currency that was backed by the bit of budget he had, and he started convincing the local economy to use that. And there was a twist to that, which was that there was a negative interest rate attached to it, meaning if you kept it for too long, its value would diminish. So it was he stripped that currency from one of the things we usually do with currency, which is storage of value, and he focused it on exchange of services and goods. So the speed, the velocity of that economy in that city was enormous. And everybody had work, income, food, shelter. Everybody. Now, the problem was that that really didn't work well with the central authorities because they were losing power over that city, of course, right? Because people were starting to be independent. So they prohibited that. And it all fell back into what it was before. And with things like that, we could have easily prevented the the situation that led to World War II, right? In which people were in a panic about their livelihoods and then blamed it on some scapegoat, in that case, the Jewish. But if you're not worried about your livelihood, you don't need a scapegoat. And we are in a moment that is very similar to this right now, right? Everybody is really scared about different things, but really scared. So going local always works. And that's why, again, we're doing this. A friend of mine assumes that it takes about 6 months to really wrap your head around all of this. So if that's the first time you hear these things, don't worry about it. That's take some time to sink in, and there's a lot of information out there, as you pointed out. There's you need to learn about GDP and multipolar traps and all of these things, but after a while, it becomes very, very clear. Wonderful. So I've said everything I wanted to say. I feel complete for today.
I know it's just very, very impressive, definitely, and yeah, very interesting. I mean, it's like a massive learning curve right now, and I feel very motivated to learn so much more, and getting into the details. Yeah, I'm excited about it, and I think that having all of this, really grasping the complexity of the challenges we face as individuals, as a society, as a community, and also as a global level, because we are all in this together. It doesn't matter if Catherine is in Kenya and I sit in Germany. You know, we are all connected, and we all feel every day the effects of our doing, like on a societal, human, planetary, global level. Learning more about the complexity, but also just really condensing it down, you know, bringing it down to Mother Earth, when Catherine is the one who has to work with the farmers. Nevertheless, having this knowledge, I just feel so, how do you say, light up. I feel this, you know, I feel more empowered now, you know, to do motherland and to really go beyond, you know. It just really fills up my capacity to expand deeper into this project, and also to engage more with people, becoming more passionate and more motivated at the end of the day. Thank you so much for sharing. I really, really appreciate this. Yeah.
Thank you for saying this, because this is exactly my hope in doing this, so that we are understand deeper motivation, all agree on the deeper motivation, and are really, really connected, and can, because we understand the deeper motivation and each other, make decisions without having to discuss everything, because we know we're after the same thing.
Yeah.
That's really, really good.
Yeah. It's just really, I really feel like that, like my backbone is getting stronger. It's very interesting. Yeah. So I also have a very strong physical sensation absorbing all of this information, and where this will lead us to. It's thank you so much. It's very powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much too, Thomas. I feel very enlightened. And each day is a learning day. So yeah.
So when you reflect on all of that during the week, I'm always happy to elaborate, deepen something, discuss something if you see something differently, and you want to challenge something, go ahead, right? Just ping me on WhatsApp, and if I have time, we just hop on a call, right?
Okay.
So this is not limited to our sessions here. I don't want this to be me delivering some propositions about the world, but this is a joint learning journey, right? So if there's anything you want to discuss, go ahead, let's discuss it, right?
Yeah, thank you so much.
Cool. Thank you for your time.